Have you ever wondered if it is possible to be in the industry of fashion, modeling, photography as a Christian? Do thoughts of doubt cross your mind? Well, it is so important for us to know that before anything else, you are first and foremost a Christian, before your status or job title. So how can we manage both? Well, today I speak to Wizdom, who owns a modelling agency, and he discusses his thoughts with me as well as his own personal journey. Hi, my name is Faith Johnson and this is Christ in Fashion. So today we have the amazing Wizdom, businessman, entrepreneur, advocate for young people, amazing person, a man of God, and really just a great advocate for all things music, fashion and entertainment. I can never really do anybody much justice. Yeah, it is. He'll pay me later. and it's honestly been a pleasure knowing you over the years. And so we first met during your time at XLP. Mm-hmm. I mean, that must have been a good 7-8 years ago. Yeah. So you were the creative director at XLP, and XLP is a youth Christian charity that's faith-based but not faith biased. That's the one. Yeah, done my research. And so your background is in music. You run a modelling agency and have done a tremendous amount of work with young people within music, as well as producing and making some of your own music. If you tell us a little bit about kind of your brief time at XLP and how you moved over to Tileyard Impact now.
Sure. So I originally, I was in a hip hop group called Green Jade for 17 years, and we had come up with a song called Guns Down. Because we were doing a show in Birmingham in the same night that Letitia Shakespeare and Charlene Ellis were unfortunately murdered. And we really felt driving home that we wanted to have some sort of response for what was going on, because at the time, sort of 2003, 2004, there wasn't actually a lot of talk around the gang issue in London and the whole issue around guns and knives. So we came up with this song, and I was working with a young person who I was mentoring, and I played them the song. I was kind of like, yeah, this song could change the world. And then they listened to it, and they looked at me really honestly and went, no offense, what difference do you think another song is going to make?
Wow.
And I really tried to listen to what he was saying, and it was like, actually, he's right. Unless we have an activity that goes alongside this, just having a song is not going to have any impact. So we'd done a little bit of work with XLP before because we knew they were in schools. So I approached them, said, look, we've got this song, you guys are in schools, how can we bring this together and create something that allows us to be able to really impact young people's lives? So we came up with the Guns Down tour, which started in 2005.
Wow.
And ran both as Guns Down and Fighting Chance until 2011. And we saw, I think, about 10,000 young people in schools across London. We became Trace FM Peace on the Streets actual schools program, and ended up with a record of the week off it, got a nomination for MOBO, and that was kind of when my relationship with XLP began. And as things sort of started to come to an end with the band, they approached me and said, well, would you like to run our arts? Because you obviously have a heart for young people, and you understand this world. How can you bring some of your industry knowledge to it? So that was what I did, and that was kind of the beginnings for me. And within XLP, we started off by doing talent showcases.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted, having been a young person, the value of talent showcases was never the show, it was what you got after it. So I wanted to make sure that we developed relationships with the young people to not just come and jump around, that's nice, and go home, but what can you do with that talent? What's your interest? What are the things you're passionate about that you don't feel that you can do? and actually give them some insight as to how do you get into the industry, whether you want this to be your career or not, just knowing that you have a talent and there's something that you can do with it. So that was how we progressed. We ended up, at the time I left XLP, we were doing the showcases in 9 boroughs across London.
Wow.
We would do a show, then we would sit down with all the young people and say, right, what did you think about your performance? What are the other things you would like to do? And then we would actively try and find ways for people to develop in those activities.
Areas.
And that range from magicians to singers, poets, actors, sound engineers, MCs, and models. And that was kind of where Fully Clothed Beauty came into it, because we'd had a number of girls come and say, well, we'd really like to get involved in modelling, but the agency that I've been to wants £1,000 for a portfolio. So we're like, no, we can do better than that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll come back to that later, but all of that was sort of the beginnings and of sort of seeing talent and coming from difficult backgrounds, because that was what we focused on in XLP, and realizing that they really needed to have uncles for the uncle-less, effectively, of having people who had relationships within business that could say, right, come and do
and
work
connect them in,
yeah. And then whilst I was at XLP, I ended up doing something doing an event with the lottery called Peace Mix, which was like around the Olympics. And they kind of asked me, well, if you were to do this again as a project, how would you present it? And that became the big music project. And off the back of that, I ended up being involved with Will from Chase and Status in opening ELAM, East London Arts and Media School.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
It's now been going since 2014. So all of those kind of experiences together kind of got me to a point where I can see there's so much youth talent.
Yep.
I can see that it needs connections.
Yep, absolutely. Man after my own heart.
But I also realised that it needed somebody in the industry opening the door outwards.
Exactly.
Instead of just trying to stand at the door and knock.
And so even through your time at XLP being kind of faith-based but not faith-biased, how have you navigated your walk with God and your Christianity through the music industry, where there may be so many vast genres and music with variation of different messaging? How have you supported young people through their journey and navigating your faith walk?
I think I come from a relatively unique place in that, I think. I didn't grow up necessarily in a Christian household. And what happened for Green Jade is effectively we came in what would now be described as a revival, effectively. We were a gang in South London.
Wow.
I was never really involved in the criminality side of it, but there were members of us who were. And I didn't join it thinking I was joining a gang. I joined a group of guys who
had the same passion.
On a Friday.
Yeah.
That was what it was. It wasn't. And you see this thing is like you have this mentality sometimes of what's it, that film called West Side Story? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
That's like the yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like dance fight.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, or even like Top Boy. It wasn't that. It was. These were just some mates, and then I realised that he does that, and
that's what
and that's what they're doing. But I'm not here for any of that. So what happened to us was, it was around the time in the 90s where hip hop was about deep, meaningful things. So we used to get speakers to come in and talk to us. And at one stage we invited a pastor down to come and talk to the band, and we'd had Nation of Islam, we had various other people come speak to us, and he just spoke very openly about this is who Christ is and this is what this is about. And you're more than welcome, but I believe he's calling you all tonight. And then over the course of about 12 months, about 14 members of the 25-member gang gave their lives to Christ.
Wow.
So that was our entry.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So, and we obviously then started, so then the idea was, okay, well, what are we going to do with the talent that we had? Because we were rapping and doing performances at the time, but it wasn't as serious. So the only negative with that is that our church was on the more extreme side of things. And
in what way?
We knew biblical stuff to a level that a lot of people didn't. But what we were struggling with was we were seeing a lot of the written word, but not a lot of the love.
Okay.
And you're reading this, that you know, Christ so loved the world, and God so loved the world, and you're reading all of these sorts of things, and it's like, but the behaviors of the people around me don't quite match up with that. So when we started to develop, and this all comes back to the reason why we've been able to survive through the industry, was we because we had each other.
Okay.
We were very much we would sit down, have Bible studies with each other, and try and work out what it was, who we wanted to be, and who God
was calling you to be. Yeah.
And as a result, we therefore had each other's backs a lot, and it meant that we were always there to sort of encourage each other to in the way that we act, the way that we behave, the way that we treat other people, and that had a real effect on us. And I mean, this is coming from a time, especially we were a Pentecostal or apostolic church at a time where there was 7 women to 1 guy, and we were rapping and performing. We got a shed load of attention. There isn't many situations where 5 black guys are going to turn up at your church and perform, right? So we learned, like, this is how we have to carry ourselves. This is how we need to be respectful. We've come from our madness to some extent. We don't want to go back into that.
Absolutely.
So we were always there to be each other's accountability, and I think that that's been a really, really big thing for us. Even now, we are very much each other's accountability.
Because that's needed.
Yes.
And so, what role do you feel fashion plays within the music industry, within music, and how you then decided to start Fully Clothed Beauty?
The unfortunate truth is that the music industry is no longer about music.
In what way?
In that the music industry is about building brands that sell things.
Yeah, that's true.
So if Stormzy's a brand, it's not just him. It's everything that he comes with.
Yeah.
It's, if you think about, Little Mix, they're a brand. And photography and visual imagery is a huge part of how you establish a brand.
Yep.
So there were a lot of girls who are involved in Fully Clothed Beauty who are singers and have kind of said to me, well, I'm not really into being modelling. I was like, it's not really about that. It's about learning how you convey the message that you want to put across in photography about who you are. If you take someone like Rihanna as an example, when Rihanna first came out, she was very much the kind of pop princess girl next door with the blonde hair, looked like Beyonce, do you know what I mean? And everything was nice and sweet. And I personally believe that was kind of a marketing tool to just get her in the conversation. As soon as she'd been established, cut the hair, does Umbrella, releases Good Girl Gone Bad, and that is now the Rihanna that we know. Yeah. And if you just look at the photography, you can see the change in who she is and what she's about just purely in her photography. Because that means that she knows how to denote and convey a message purely through pictures. Absolutely. And that's where I find, and especially a friend of mine had once said to me, we're now in a world that's full of screens. Before it used to just be your TV, now you're standing at a bus stop and it's a screen. Yeah. And it means that there's more and more content that's required to fill those screens. So that the more that people are aware of their power to communicate visually, I think the more prepared you are for the industry. And so this series is about the touch points that fashion has within different areas. And so establishing a modeling agency, specifically with a focus and an agenda around plus size models, how have you found that has been for you within Britain and in the UK, kind of running and starting a modeling agency in London? It's interesting because I didn't actually go out specifically to work with plus size models. I just went out to work with models. That's interesting. So internally, I don't necessarily make the differentiation. So when I'll do shoots, I won't do a plus size model shoot and a standard model shoot. I'll do a shoot, and I'll make sure that both models are catered for.
Yeah.
Whether that be the brands that we're working with, or and that the same thing goes for colour. It wasn't a case of I've had a number of models say to me, I love the way that you support dark-skinned women. I was like, I didn't know I was going out of my way to.
Yeah, it was just something that was natural. Yeah.
And that was because we created imagery that said, I can do
so much more.
So much more.
Yeah.
And I've really seen the power of being able to do that, because it's a big thing in faith that says, actually, we walk by faith and not by sight. Which to me means, I take that as people who don't have faith walk by sight and not by faith.
That's true.
So you have to be able to
show them. Yeah.
And so that's what we try to do. We try to be able to show this is what this young talent can do if you give them the opportunity to be able to do so. So rather than, we don't actually do a lot of bookings, we create the environment where bookings are possible.
Okay.
We try and create the environment and the things.
It's a really good strategy.
So that you're more likely to be picked.
Booked and picked to do those things. And so for a Christian girl that wants to get into modelling, how do you think she is able to be empowered to be able to do that? And yeah, what do you think the role that faith and God plays within a person that wants to get into modelling? Because I've experienced that. We've had projects where it's like, okay, we need models, and I'll connect with my Christian network, and some of their parents may have some reservations around, okay, I don't think I want my child to do this, and it's really empowering them to acknowledge and know that that there are values and there is a level of character to ensure that any project we do is glorifying God.
Yeah, totally. I think I try, at the very beginning, I explain what it is that we're trying to achieve, and I also separate modelling out into its components so that you can choose what you want to be involved in.
That's interesting. That's good.
So for those who may not be aware, but you have beauty modelling, which is headshots. You have e-commerce modelling, which is full length, normally selling clothes.
Yeah, that's true.
On campaigns for companies like, as I say, Boohoo, Pretty Little Things, that sort of thing. You have high-end, we almost call it like fashion dynamic modelling, which is more editorial in its look. Then you'll have glamour, which is sort of bikini, swimwear, lingerie, those sort of things. And then you'll have things like sportswear modelling, or sometimes what we'll call everyday modelling. You might be working for a campaign for the council. And I think it's just about being able for people to understand where they want to go and what they want to achieve. I used to watch America's Top Model a lot. And it always annoyed me that you would get to the second episode and it'd be like, okay, we're doing a bikini shoot. And then someone would be like, oh, my dad's a pastor and he's not going to like this. Like, you haven't watched this show for the last 10, 15 years to know that this is coming? Be aware that if you want to get to certain places, you can't be a Victoria's Secret model if you don't want to be seen wearing lingerie. The two cannot happen, right? But it is about the intention and the way that you understand modelling as to how a garment can be shown. Yeah. So for me, a really big thing is about context. I do a bikini shoot each year with my models at a beach. I do not do bikini shoots in a hotel or in a studio, because the place for a bikini is at a beach. And within that context, I'm not putting anyone in a situation where they would be uncomfortable, because if you went away on holiday, you would wear a bikini on a beach. It's about being appropriate. A bikini is probably not appropriate at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in November when it's snowing on Croydon High Street. So I'm not going to shoot it there. And that's the thing that's important for me. Even when we just started doing more lingerie shoots, and even for that, it's been about context. It's about e-commerce shooting. This is not a sexual thing. This is how all of you have bought underwear at some point in time and have required a model to be wearing your underwear to see what it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. You have to understand how those different parts of the industry work, and that is about the training of being able to support that. If you stand like this, it means this. If you stand like this, you convey this. So if you want to convey this, know to stand like that.
And so you've recently been appointed as a director for an organisation that is about supporting and excelling gospel music within the UK. And how did that come about?
When you're whenever you're in any GMI has been around for a little while. The scene is really important. Juliet Fletcher, who's
until you take a step back.
And you go, nobody knows who when I left the group. I'll start talking about Dietrich Haddon and Fred Hammond and people like in the mainstream industry, and keep an eye on what made it out of gospel that I would see. And it happened to me when I was coming out of Green Jet. I was looking for a job, and I can't remember where I went to. I went to a job interview, and I said to them, one of the things we did, we supported Delirious. And the person went, who's Delirious? And I'm coming from a Christian background where Delirious are U2 in the CCM market. They're the biggest Christian band of all time. The person on the other table didn't know who they were, so it held no currency. So I realized that it was important to be able to understand the mainstream industry enough that if there were artists who were like me, who wanted to have an effect outside of the walls of the church, you needed to understand this game, or you at least needed to be able to have someone who could show you how this worked and give you some sort of context. So that was very much what I did. So when they were sort of reforming the GMIA and they wanted to kind of renew it and take it forward, I very much wanted to get involved because I had both an understanding of how gospel industry worked,
particularly in the UK.
In the UK, but I also understood how the music industry worked and was moving forward, and I wanted to make sure that I could be someone who could bridge that gap and make sure that artists who are faith-based but not called to work in the Christian community could be supported. Could the things that they needed was represented well in and amongst the board, and be able to sort of update as to, this is currently what's happening now. Like, I've just come from a meeting with Google, Facebook, and Apple Beats Radio, and they've said they want streaming. What are we doing streaming? Are we on? Have we got?
Are we working towards that?
On Spotify, have we got playlists? Have we got representation in Apple on Apple Music? What are we doing? Because there's no point trying to rebuild or build the gospel industry for an industry that existed
10 years ago. Yeah, even 30 years ago, absolutely. So we've gone through your journey at XLP into Talyard Impact and running your modelling agency, and you've been running a series of master classes and involved with several different projects and really kind of supporting and pushing our community and culture in Britain. And so what is next for Wizdom?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to get through what I've got on my plate now.
Well, that's good. A lot's going on, so that's a good position to be in.
What I really want, and I really see that there is a need for, that I'm hearing from businesses, is to continue to establish a position where Talyard Impact can be an intermediary between large corporate and community.
Okay.
That's both local community, but that's also in relation to things like Black Lives Matter. Because there's been, so if I give the example of within the drum and bass world as an example, Jungle kind of started the drum and bass world, which was very much black music. Over the last few years, it's become more drum and bass and less black music. And they're starting to pick up and go, well, I don't know, black artists.
Yeah.
I It's because a lot of black artists don't feel like they're involved,
Yeah.
don't feel included, don't feel like they're going to be supported, so they go over to other types of music, and that started to pick up. So I'm really interested in being in that space.
That's amazing.
Of being able to help the industry move forward in that sense, and that's kind of really what I want to do, is just make sure that there is a doorway that connects, because now COVID has given us an opportunity to stop.
Absolutely.
Assess. And now that we're assessing, we're going, there is a problem there, but it is on both sides, because there's no point with all these companies going, right, we want more black CEOs.
We want more diversity.
We want more diversity. And then they're like, but there ain't nobody there that we know. And it's got to be, so you've got to have that conversation with the businesses, but then you've got to be able to upskill and empower the talent coming through to know, if you're going to be in this environment to survive, you've got to be on it.
Yeah.
You've got to know this stuff. You've got to be aware, because
and in touch.
And in touch. And because you are still coming up against private school kids who have gone skiing, who got a cousin whose mum is the head of
X, Y, and Z,
and you got to kill it above them. You still got to be able to do that. And I think the talent needs that kind of support. So I'm really interested in, like, I know where the resources are over here, and these are the guys who don't have any resources that have all of the talent. How do we bring those together?
Make that connection.
How do we make that connection? And that's the space where I really feel that I'm supposed to occupy. And I'm really working towards making sure I have quality on both sides. Where there's quality talent, knows what it's doing, knows what it's about, and there are quality job opportunities and
bring them in,
support and resources to bring those things together.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your time. And it's just really been amazing and enlightening to hear your journey, hear some of the projects that you're part of, and meet up again and catch up. And if people want to hear more about your work and what you're doing, where can they find you?
Definitely on Instagram at Talyard Impact is the most up-to-date place to get us. We also have a website, which is talyardimpact.co.uk. So that's a good place to follow. You know, we do. We're going to be putting more of our masterclasses up online there. And there'll be more information about how people can get involved.
Brilliant.
We're working on a couple of big things at the moment that hopefully coming out soon or next year to really help rebuild the industry. I currently have an artist development program that we're currently recruiting for, which will start the end of September and October, called our Gap Year. So please, if you are a solo artist or a band, we have a year-long paid-for artist development program, which gives you rehearsal time a week, songwriting sessions, 2 days within the recording studio, all paid for.
Wow.
What we need is your commitment, and you will be amazed by the amount of people who have that offer, drop out and don't complete it. Okay. So that's what I'm interested in. You can find the details about that on
your website. Thank you. So today we've had Wizdom, who shared his story with his time at XLP through to now the CEO of Talyard Impact, and his journey through the music industry, his modeling agency, and the role God has played within his life, and the touch points that fashion has had within all those different areas. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, this is Christ in Fashion. Jesus said, "What shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" Although you may be interested in a certain field, you need to establish your limits. Never allow or accept anything that will make you compromise your faith. We have a holy calling, and God has granted us the inner strength to live for Him.